something for our conversation, and there's just so many points to deal with. It's almost like I'm thinking that it's almost like you want to take like every like aliyah, each of the different sections of the Torah, and just like you really got to hone in on it. But one of the ideas is to just to start thinking about, and just to kind of like piggyback it off of the learning we've been doing by the Ramchal, is this a really good example of the concept of the kav, right? The straight line, right? And the Ramchal talks about how they're you know it's like it's almost like like the puppet thing, right? Where you have like every single part of the body is moved by the puppet, but there's a straight line, which is a string in the case of a puppet, and it's connected to something above that is unnoticeable to the person watching the puppet, right? And so you could use that, like the concept itself is there. Everything's there to teach us about Torah, right? Everything in the physical world is there to teach us something about the Torah. Or when I say the Torah, an expression of creation and its relationship to God, right? Everything we could sit back and just think about any concept, anything that exists in the physical world, and we could sit back and say, well, how does this explain a part of creation? Whether it's a football game, whether it's the way an animal's behaving, whether it's a puppet, So in this case of the Cub, there's the idea that the that us, like each one of us, there's this aspect of this line or this umbilical cord, maybe another way to look at it, that is bringing light from the endless world into the Simsun to us physically, right? And that's why we're able to function. We're receiving light constantly from the Creator. Now the thing is, and this is like so huge, right? Because it's like perfect timing with our learning. The Ramchal explains, as you guys know, that when those lights enter the limited reality, which is a Simsun, other aspects of that light manifest, which is one is the concept of the polar opposite of that light, right? And that polar opposite of that light being what we call the Sitra Akra, we call the dark side, and there's 10 dimensions of that, right? Now the Ramchal spends so much time in chapter 30 really honing in our mind that that other side, that opposite, obviously the creator made it, but it's not receiving from this upper world as we are. And he makes a clear distinction. He says, Israel and the ministering angels feed from this side, and the other nations and the destructive angels receive from that other component, right? Now, obviously, it makes sense why you need to have the duality, because if you didn't have that component, how would the mechanism of free will, which is also a byproduct of this, of the limited reality, right? Because there's no free will in the Ein Sof, right? It's just pure light. So with that being said, how does this book of Shemos, because the beginning of creation is really dealing with aspects of the other side, right? But really, the internal conflict, right? Like issues between families, right? The issue between you know Adam and his sons, right? And you have Noah and issues with his son, more family stuff. Then you have generations. You have Abraham, and Abraham has Yitzhak and Ishmael, right? And there's conflicts, and you have Yosef. I mean, you have Asaph. You have Asaph. You have Isaac. And Isaac and Ishmael. They have problems, right? And then you have Isaac, and then Isaac, his sons, Jacob and Asaph have problems. And then you have Jacob, and then all of his kids, have issues, right? So that aspect, you could say, like, those are the same entities, and they're dealing with a conflict, right? And as as the Chabad, as the Chassidut teaches, we have an animal soul and a godly soul, right? And so that aspect of us is a conflict. And you also have the aspect that, you have the soul, which is, expression of pure light in the body, which is made of a total opposite substance, right? It's made of the dirt, it's made of the ground, right? The flesh, right? So you have those dualities. Now we're going into a different era of duality where you have Israel and then you have an expression of the other nations. Now, on the surface level, you have the Jews going into Mitzrayim, right? Dealing with the Egyptians and Pharaoh. But if we're looking at it from the frame of how Ramchal has taught us, we're learning about that aspect of the light force from the Ein Sof functioning in the Simsum, and it's dealing with the force of the other side, right? The other side, the Sitra Aqua, the Klipa, the whole thing. So really, if you took off the personalities and you took off the human component and you just looked at it, you would see two different, energies, two different expressions in the same room, right? In this case, being Mitzrayim. And so that's a very important dynamic because when you understand that dynamic, then not only are we learning about what our ancestors went through, we're also learning about the creative design of the world, right? And the challenges of the world because the whole concept of the Simsun is what is going through this process of deficiency, right? And going through the deficiency to get to the perfection. Right. And so we see the deficiency in the frame of Mitzrayim, right? The deficiency, you could say started with the brothers beefing with each other, right? And Yosef being sold into slavery. But now you're dealing with a whole nother level, right? Because the perfection in that deficiency was the unification between the brothers, the father, you know, all coming together, right? And now we're going into another level of deficiency, which is this aspect of the physical oppression. Now, there's a bigger idea, and this has to do with the act of when Adam ate from the Eitz Hadas, when he ate from the tree of knowledge, that there were many sparks of holiness that were lost, right? In those sparks of holiness, went all over the planet Earth, right? Maybe even arguably the galaxy, but for now we're dealing with planet Earth. And so part of that mission of the descendants of Adam was to go out and to collect those sparks. And those sparks, like what are we saying sparks? We're saying it like we're saying it like you have like a what does it mean sparks, right? Like the idea around this idea of sparks is to say that like, Adam was this super soul of light, right? And when he went against God, there was a response to that, and part of that response was losing, some of his light, right? He lost the ability to be in Gan Eden. He had to wander the world, him and his wife, I think it was like 130 years. And like say correlates it to our own life, right? Is that, if we've ever committed a sin or we did something that we know wasn't right, we felt a lack after that, right? We felt this like emptiness. We felt like something was like missing. And we do tshuva and we work hard and we change our ways to get back to that place. And many times we go even higher than we were prior. So that's a similar thing by Adam, right? And but because he embodied all of creation, the mitzvot, that those sparks that were released were something that like only we could have we could achieve it. We could elevate those sparks. We could get those sparks back. And so when as you see the journey of the Jews, right? The journey of Bnei Israel is collecting those sparks. And in the to what those sparks mean and the different aspects of the sparks and there's different levels, and it's like, what one level of receive, I mean, there's 10 levels of receiving sparks. There's so many different, there's Torah mitzvahs, learning Torah mitzvahs that bring sparks. There's an aspect of suffering. There's all these things that are connected to, this experience of the lost aspects of Adam and recapturing that, right? Now, the thing is, the Ramchal talks about this idea, and even Rav Ashlag, he talks about, I think, even, I don't want to say more clear, but he hones in on it more, which is this process of the two aspects of creation, right? The aspect that we experience, and then the aspect that once we go through this experience, we get to another aspect of creation, which is the future reality or the perfect reality, right? And so we go through this process of struggle, of toil, of difficulties, and on one level, like you play a video game, you get points, right? You go through each level, you do certain things, you get points, you get so many points, you go to the next level. Again, another metaphor for creation. And so that idea of us being living people and living in this reality and going through this process, of life, is a process of dealing with challenges, right? Dealing with things that don't feel good, dealing with things that create doubt, dealing with things where like you say to yourself, well, how is this going to happen? How is this going to work out? Whether it's paying bills, whether it's relationship, whether it's children, whether it's, health, whatever it is, everyone, should be successful in those challenges. But we have those things. But are they really challenges? Yes, they're challenges, but are they really challenges? What do I mean? Well, if I know that the video game is designed for these characters to come and try to stop me, right? But God gives me more power, right? You play, I mean, I don't know why I always use Mario Brothers. I played many other video games, okay? Like I'm not that old, but the point is just saying, like, we know, like, you're playing a video game, or what is it? What is this, the game that everyone's playing now? Call of Duty. I don't know. Like, they go around and shooting everybody. I don't know. The games are like too like. I don't know. I tried to play video games a little bit like recently. I can't get into it. Like, I can't get into it. But the point is just saying they have all these games. You can play people in different locations, all this type of stuff. But the point is, that there's a challenge there. And you know that the game is designed for you to have enemies that or challenges that you were given the power to overcome, right? We know that. And you can do things in these games and you get more powers. And the more powers that you get, again, another metaphor, the more powers you get, the more you're able to deal with those challenges that you have in life. And so that's the game of life, right? That's the game that the Kabbalists have shown us. Like, this is the reality that we live in. We live in a reality where we're going to wake up and we're going to be hungry. We're going to wake up and we're going to wonder, how the day's going to go. We're going to wonder how we're going to complete certain tasks. We're going to wonder if we're going to be able to work. We're going to wonder, we're going to make money. We're going to wonder, all these things are lacks. Like, we don't wake up and just say like, oh, you know, everything is fine. Everything's going to take care of itself, right? And someone could say, oh, well, if you had a really high consciousness, you wake up and you're at peace with yourself. No, when people say that, it's not true from the way they're saying it. The people who reach very high level of consciousness, it's not that they don't experience challenges, it's just that they're extremely clear where those challenges come from, right? They're extremely clear on where those challenges come from. And to the point that they're treating it like almost like a video game, right? And because of that awareness and because of that connection, and that is an energy, right? That's a superpower. And that superpower that they carry, knowing that everything is from Hashem, knowing that they have to have some type of a nisarine, some type of uh, challenge, right? They know that that's part of it. They're going to wake up, wanting to eat breakfast, wanting to drink water. The body's been fasting, right? I mean, easily Hashem could have made it that we know we wake up but we're not lacking anything physically, but He makes it in a way that we lack physically. Why? Because the whole purpose of us utilizing time, space, and motion is the ability for us to go out and manifest and to gather those sparks and to change that condition. And if we have the consciousness that everything is from Hashem, then we're able to look at those challenges and really take advantage of it, right? Like I'm dealing with difficulties. I'm sure all of us are dealing with different forms of difficulties and ways, but what is the perspective on the difficulty, right? What is the perspective of it? Because this is the connection to this book of Shemos, right? This is the connection to this idea. And then people say, what does Shemot mean? It means names, right? It means names. And so people say, oh, well, the Torah talks about the names that came into Mitzrayim. Okay, fine. Fine. Rookie approach. Very nice. But let's go a little further. Where does the concept of names come from? We're learning Ramchal. It's the endless world. The world has lights. Those lights, certain lights of the endless world, were chosen to be manifest. How do they become manifest? They go through the dynamic of 22 chambers. What are these 22 chambers called? Letters. These letters turn into what? Words. They congregate. They come together. They like each other. Like boy meets girl. They come, they hang out. They go out on a double date with their other friends. Okay, it's all these people going out. So you have letters. The letters match up. Letters match up with other letters. And then they form words, right? Or names. And then those names are the dynamic that go through the Simsum that become manifest. We call those names as they congregate the Torah. And that Torah goes through this process called the Simsum. It goes through the process of this Simsum, and those names become manifest physically. So let's look at it for what it is. Everything that is being expressed is an expression from the endless world. The names that were part of the original dynamic of creation. And those creation became manifest. And as we understand, there's two different parallels to creation. One aspect is coming from the creator directly, and the other aspect is a byproduct of the opposite force that's a byproduct of the Simsun. So when we're looking around and we're learning this Parsha, we're learning this book, we're looking at that duality, right? We're looking at that duality, specifically the experience in in Mitzrayim. Right? We're specifically dealing with the dynamic of Mitzrayim, of people, of situations that of people and situations that in essence want to that have to be manifest, but also have to propel the side of good to persevere, to overcome, to surpass, to transcend, to get to the ultimate perfection. This is life. This is creation, right? This is creation. Creation is us going through this process of gathering sparks, going through challenges, overcoming, persevering, not giving up. And by we doing that, we're refining ourselves, we're purifying ourselves, we're bringing these lights, and this light is bringing us to this ultimate perfection. In our reality, we call it Mechaye Hamatim, the resurrection of the dead, the beginning of the new era, the Messianic, the age of Mashiach. Here, we're talking about it on a micro level in the frame of Mitzrayim, in those struggles and the purification that allowed us to achieve the connection to Mount Sinai. And then eventually, from bringing down that Torah, bringing down those names, the names that form the Simsun, that those names, that system that formed the creation that we live in, that reality that we live in, that was formed by those letters that turn into words, that turn into names, that turn into sentences, that formed what we call the Torah in the heavens, that created the Simsun, right? In that frame of limitation that was created formed the reality that we're in. God looked inside of the Torah and created the world. Now we get it, right? Now the thing is, from that perspective, then we could look at the Torah that was received on Mount Sinai. What was the Torah on Mount Sinai? The Torah on Mount Sinai were the say the intellectual or the sparks that we could that encompassed all of creation, but allowed us to have instructions on how to function in this reality of limitation and illusion, right? This is the Torah. This is the 5 books of Moses. This is the Tanakh. This is the Midrashim. This is the Mishnah. This is the Gemara. These are the teachings of the Rishonim. That's why we say all of this is Torah, because the whole concept is to understand and have a clarity on the limited reality that we live in. How does a Simpson work? How do we work inside of the Simpson? That's all we're reading. It's not religion. I'm sorry, it's not religion. It's instructions for B'nai Israel to function in the world of complete concealment, where we're only dealing with the residue, the mishu, the residue of the reality, right? We know the supernatural body. That's the next chapter. We're going into the Ramchal, and I would do it now, but it's at night, and some people say you should learn Kabbalah after the sun goes down, before Chatzot. I mean, you know what I mean? It's a whole thing. So I'm just trying to be respectful. Not respectful. I don't want to bring no dark energies on me. You know what I'm saying? Because you're going to arouse certain things, which is a whole conversation.
Yo,
Go
Rob, I
ahead.
got a question about that.
Yeah, go
So
ahead, boy.
I was gonna send you a message and I ask you during this period, as we come up to pace like these 7 weeks,
Yeah.
would it be okay to study Kabbalah during this time period during the day? Like, what was
Yeah,
your rule of me on
definitely.
that?
Even more so. So this whole idea of the 7 days, it's like, I mean, 7 weeks, right? Shovavim, right? So it's a very interesting, powerful concept, right? Because anytime, like let's just use nature for example, right? The darkest time of the night is right before the sun comes up, right? And right now we're getting prepared for a super light, right? Which is Pesach, right? Super, super light. Like the whole thing's about to change for us. So Shovavim is a 7 week process, and we know the 7 weeks are connecting us to the Sphira, right? Just like we're going to have 7 weeks of the Omer, right? So the 7 weeks prior to the Pesach are also holy, but we have to prepare ourselves and understand what we're going through, because there's a force that's trying to knock us off, right? There's a force that, they say you should be very protective about impure dreams and these types of things during this time. And so a lot of people do fasting. Some people fast on Mondays and Thursdays through this period of time. Some people do additional learning. People start learning the Pirkei Avot on Shudat Shichi, on the third meal on Shabbat, right? They just start from Pirkei Avot and they start going through it, right? And so this dynamic of this dynamic of this preparation before the light, this the preparation of going through this process of towards the end of concealment, right? Because these 7 weeks is like we're coming out of Hanukkah, we're getting up to to Shvat, right? Coming up, I think it's next week, and we have the trees, we have the day of the trees, where it's like now the sap from the trees starts to grow, like meaning the trees are starting, that the light force of the creator that's coming down from the heavens starts to rejuvenate nature, right? Nature was in a place of concealment, rain, snow, the earth is far away from the earth. I mean, the sun's far away from the earth, colder, right? But that's not just like, oh, it's nature, this is just the way the cosmos, this is the way that the nature works. No, this is God's influence, right? God could easily change the whole thing, global warming, right? So it's just to say that, so this process of 7 weeks is that. Now the thing is saying that, we should all, just take on new things, right? We should definitely learn during Shovavim. We should definitely know, um, definitely learn as much Zohar as you can, learn as much as Kabbalah. I mean, we're learning every day, pretty much, right? So we're in that sugya at a very high level. We're learning a very, very, very high level as we're talking it out now, right? But in the frame of Mitzrayim, right? In the frame of this aspect of slavery, this aspect of concealment, right? It's not by accident it's going on in this time of the year, right? It's not by accident. So the frame of reference, right? The frame of reference that we're going through is understanding that there's two forces being expressed here in the frame of the Samsun, right? And everything that exists in a physical reality is an expression of a name, right? And we have to know that in concealment. The tree is an expression of a set of lights. The blade of grass is an expression of a set of lights. The ant, everything in creation is an expression of a set of lights from the endless world that manifest in this reality. The highest light being human being, right? And the highest light within the human being is the person or the people who keep Torah mitzvahs. So anyway, so that's where we're at in the sugya, right? And we're trying to gain clarity on that. So when we look at the first chapter itself, right? The first chapter talks about Yosef passing away, the brothers passing away, and the Jewish people, being, numerous, being fertile, right? Having success. But the people around them are not happy about it. The people around them are threatened by it. That's happening right now. That's happened for thousands of years. Whether you want to say the Igbo Jews in Africa, or you want to say the Ashkenaz in Europe, or you want to say the Jews in Iran, well, Jews are always successful, right? No matter where they're at. Israel, because we're blessed with a wisdom that comes from Avraham Avinu, right? That's part of the genetic code that we're going to stand out, that we're going to have unique talents, we're going to have unique gifts, and people are going to look at us and be like, well, who do they think that they are? You're nobody. You're a minority compared to us. There's more of us than you. And as they see you grow, as they see you build, they're going to they're responding that way. Like, well, maybe they'll get big as us. I mean, they're so special. We can see it. So what do the Egyptians try to do? Right. They said, well, you know what? The reason why they, are so fruitful, right? Because the non-Jews sitting there trying to calculate because they don't want to accept God, right? This is the issue that they have, right? They don't want to accept Hashem. So they want to sit there and they want to say, hey, you know what? Why are these people so numerous? Why are these people so numerous? What are they doing? You know what it is? They don't really have to work. Yosef, they don't have to pay taxes like all of us. They're able to live, they live in this kind of like exalted royal state. And that's why they're fruitful. That's why they're multiplying. That's why their children are so beautiful, because they have stress-free lives. And so what do? They come together and say, you know what? We're going to prove to them that it's nothing special about them. So what do? They trick them into labor, right? They bring them into the society. Hey, integrate with us. We want to be friends with you. We want to connect, right? You got to read the midrashim, right? They made a whole thing, a whole show of perils and all. They say, yeah, we're going to build these buildings, and you guys are so special, and we want you guys to be a part of it, and we're all together. And then as they got them outside of their mold, and they started to want to be connected to the other nations, to the dark side, right? Then the dark side traps them, right? And then they go through this process of suffering and pain and this whole thing. This is not just stories. This is expression of the light that comes from the Kav and dealing with the light from the other side. And as Ramchal teaches, the light from the Kav, the light from the upper heavens is stronger. Sorry about that. The light is stronger from the side of good, right? The side of good is stronger. But if the side of good feeds the other side, then that other side can develop a tremendous strength. But even that's only going to be temporary, right? Because the way the world is designed, that good is always going to defeat evil. Good is always going to defeat evil. So right now in this year, we're not even in the words. We're not even in the characters. I mean, we're just utilizing the characters so we can understand how the light force of the Creator works with the Jew and the non-world in the world of Klippa. the world of Citra Akra. This is what we're learning about right now because we're dealing with it every day. You have to have challenges. You're going to have people jealous of you. You're going to have people to try to prove that you're not really blessed. That's the reality of the other side. And why is it that way? Because that's there for us. Like sometimes I think about myself too. Like, I think like, like sometimes you know, I you want to be liked by everybody. It's a desire. It's a desire. You want to be liked by everybody. But it's just not going to happen. But I could tell you throughout my life, I've always been liked by the right people, right? It's always been the right people, but not everybody, right? There's a part of us that wants to be accepted. There's a part of us that wants to fit in, want to be a part of the collective. And when you're destined on the mission, it's just not the case. Because just like Joseph's life, right? Joseph was super talented, super gifted. But Hashem put him through very big challenges at every stage of his life in order to give him a sense of humility, right? So when we think about like, why did God create this reality? Why couldn't it just be all good? Why couldn't it just be all good? And I'm saying it like Jay-Z. Why can't it be all good? Because that aspect of bad, that aspect of rejection, that aspect of not fitting in, that aspect of not, being accepted with the collective is the very thing that keeps us close to God, right? You have to have that. If you're on a mission, you're going to have rejection, right? You're going to have that. You're going to have people that don't feel comfortable around you. You're going to have people that are jealous of you. You're going to have people that only talk to you to see you fail. You know how many people got, they won't, I'm not trying to diss people, but I know people got a certain level of hana. Like people I know were jealous of me were coming up to when they found out me and my ex broke up. Oh man, I heard about it. I heard about it. Oh man, it's gonna work out. And they had smiles on their faces though. They were trying to act like they were like trying to film me. And I was like, bro, get off me, bro. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, because that's just the reality of the situation. Right. There was so many people jealous of us. And we've even talked about it post our relationship, right? We both experienced it on our side, right? And we were a couple of Jerusalem, man. We had the whole thing locked down on many levels. But there was other issues there and it didn't continue on. But the point is just saying that that's part of the game of life, right? There's going to be people there, and the Hashem makes them that way. They're a part and they're connected. They may not be completely connected, but a lot of people are connected to that other side energy. And you're going to have to deal with that. And sometimes, some days, people are more connected to it than others, right? If they're a fellow Jew, they could be connected to that dark side. That doesn't mean that they're completely dark as the other nations, but it just means that they're connected to that. Who knows what people are doing behind closed doors, right? Who knows? But nevertheless, this is the dynamic, right? And this is the makeup of Mitzrayim, right? This is the makeup of this parsha. Now that before we become a nation, right, we have to go through this process of realization. Now, another aspect is that some of the sages explain that the tyranny that the Jews went through was because they really didn't have anything to offer the other nations, right? They were shining, they were doing their things, they had their fortitude, but they didn't really have something to offer. It's like you're around a bunch of lions, right? And the lions see you and they're just like, oh man, these lions are starving, right? And you're surrounded by them. So what are they going to do? They want to devour you, right? They want to devour you. They're hungry, they're starving, they haven't eaten. But if you were able to pull out a suitcase and you were able to pull out these huge ribeye steak pieces, right? Big pieces of steak and feed them, those lions would chew on it. They'll eat on it and they will lose interest in you. But you got to keep feeding them, right? Because that's the way they're designed. The lion is hungry, it wants to eat. The bear is hungry, it wants to eat. So what are you going to do? It's going to eat you because you taste good. And so Hashem, gave us something. So we have to see where the lack is also, because there was no Torah at the time. There was no like way to like pass something over to them and say, hey, you know, um, you know, I know you're jealous. I know you're envious. I know you see a light that you don't possess because your energy comes from the other side. And you're looking at me and you're like, well, why are you getting light from that other side? And then Hashem gives me ability to share some words of Torah with you, some ideas with you, some concepts, some inspiration, some good midot. And then from there, I'm able to feed you some energy. I'm able to feed you some light. So it wasn't until the Jews were able to go in onto Mount Sinai that reality of us being able to deal with the other nations as a collective, right? Abraham was able to do it. Abraham was out teaching, right? But all the elders of Israel passed away at this time. And so the Israel was just reaping the benefits of all that Kedusha of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Yosef, right? Not saying Yosef was an Avot, but he was a bridge between the Avot, the forefathers, and Klal Israel. He was the middle ground. But Yosef saved all of humanity. Yosef created all the wealth in Egypt. All the wealth in Egypt came because of Yosef. And so the Jewish people were benefiting from that light. And they were have great they had very comfortable lives. But they didn't have a mechanism to deal with other people. Before then, they were just Bedouins, right? They were just traveling in the desert. Abraham was over here. He had his caravan. Yitzhak was doing his thing. You know, Jacob was traveling around with his crew, his wives, his children, the whole thing. And and now they're in a metropolitan. Now they're living in close proximity to people. Yes, they had conflicts on different journeys. They had wars and with different tribes and battles, but they were still rolling on their own thing. Now, okay, now, now they have to be in a dynamic where now they have to be in a dynamic where they're living in close proximity of other people. They're living in a town, or they're living in a neighborhood. And now that they're living in this town, in this neighborhood, you know, they have a new set of challenges, right? And that new set of challenges is like how to keep my distinct reality and deal with people that are really coming from the other side, that are coming from a different form of energy with a different set of moral standards and ideas and ambitions and these types of things. So that's a dilemma. That's kind of like the introduction. So let's read a little bit from the pasuk, from the let's read some pasukim from the parsha, just for the sake of the spirit of the Torah, because I think we're kind of clear on what we're reading, right? Because we don't want to just read, like a child, right? We don't want to read the Torah and say, oh, well, here are the stories and this and blah blah blah. No, we want to see it as what is Hashem teaching us as a mechanism. Okay, so this is the third chapter, and this is the thing. So this is where kind of like everything really goes to the next level, right? So it says, Moshe haya ro'eh et son Sion yitro totino the Kohen Median, right? So see, Moshe tended to the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, right, who was a priest of Median. And he's working, he's doing this thing, and he's taking his flock, and he came to this place Horeb, right? Famous book Horeb by Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, but it means the mountain of God. So it says, Vayira Malach Adonai Alav Balvet Balbat Ish. So he's saying that the messenger, there was a Malach, the messenger of God appeared in front of him in a bush, and he gazed, and there was a bush of a flame, and it was not consumed. Okay. Vayamar Moshe. So Moshe says, let us turn aside and look at the marvelous sight. Why doesn't the bush burn? So there's different reasons. Some people ask the question, why did Hashem have to come as a bush, this type of thing. Some people say that a bush couldn't be made into an idol, right? A burning bush is not something that you could try to replicate or anything like that. It had a unique, distinct dynamic, and it created wonderment. Vayira, Adonai ki sor uli ota veikara alav. So he says the burning bush turned aside, and he called to Moses, and he says, Moshe, Moshe, right? It says, Vayomer, Moshe, Moshe, Vayomer, Hineni. He says, and he answered, I'm here. So he's like, wait, what's going on? He says, do not come closer, stand where you are, for the place that you stand, the ground is holy. Now, why does God have to say that? Right? Because once we acknowledge Hashem's presence, we're in a holy place. Right? We're in somewhere extremely holy. We're somewhere extremely high. Vayomer Anoki Elohei Aviecha ve'Elohei Abraham ve'Elohei Yitzhak ve'Elohei Yaakov. He says, I am the God of your forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Now, this is an important point because when we dive in the Shemon Esrei, when we dive in the Amida, the 18 blessings, we start off with this idea of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So when we're talking to the Creator, we are arousing our ancestors, right? We have ancestors that are in the heavens that are on our side, right? That we have ancestors that are advocating for us. And so when we think about the Avos, we think about our other ancestors that came before us, the ones that were righteous, the one that endured difficulties and harshness and were able to endure and still had faith in God and never gave up, even with limited means. We can ask our ancestors to assist us, right? We can ask our ancestors to hit his face, right? He hit his face. He said, "Don't be afraid." So let's just look at a little commentary on this. See if we can find something by the Or Chaim. Uh, not even a Rashi on this. Okay. All right. I don't want to go so much into it, but the point is just saying in this third chapter, in the first chapter, you hear about all of this crazy attack of death, right? Pharaoh wanting to kill children, wanting to take people out, wanting this. The women are helping each other. They're working behind the scenes. The whole thing. The second chapter goes into Moshe falling in the hands of Batya, the very entity that's trying to destroy it. And within that entity, there's a nurturing, right? And this process of nurturing allows him to grow up, and he goes through this process. And so I'm gonna leave on this point, right? It's a famous commentary that talks about this idea. They asked the question, why is it that Moshe has to go through this process? He's the most righteous man in the world, and it seems like his own personal journey starts with this violent experience where he kills this Egyptian, right? Right, where he kills this Egyptian. It's in chapter 2, right? I mean the third chapter. Sorry, no, it's chapter 2. I was right. Wait, hold on. Yeah, chapter 3. Hold on, man. Okay, so it's like this. So he says, "Ve'ahi bayamim hahem ve'gidal Moshe v'yatzeh." So he says, after time, he says, sometime after when Moses had grown up, he went out and he saw his kinsfolks, right? He saw other Jews, right? His kinsfolks, people he's related to. And he witnessed them laboring, right? Because we went through the whole process of how they got sucked into this false ideology of connection to the dark side, and they were under oppression. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He says, Ve'afen ko, ve'ko, ve'ira ki ein
Gotta
ish.
wipe these
So,
papers.
huh?
Here.
What are you saying? Hold on. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. So in essence, Moshe comes out, and that this is the dilemma Moshe is dealing with, right? And I think this is a dilemma that all of us can connect to. Moshe goes through this process, and he grows up inside Pharaoh's palace, and he has all the best schools, he has access to the best foods, he has the best clothes, everything. And then he grows up, right? His consciousness expands, right? And he starts to look around him, and he sees like, wait, the people who I'm most like are going through this huge difficulty, right? And the world that raised me is actually against me, is against me becoming who I'm supposed to become, is against me going through this process of achieving my ultimate destiny as a descendant of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, being a Levi, right? So I grow up in this reality, and that reality is against who I'm supposed to become. And the people who are identified as the people that I am are going through difficulties. And so the commentary says that Moshe was in like a perplexed thing in life. Like, who am I? Am I the Jew or am I the Egyptian? Who am I? And so when that dilemma of asking himself, who is he really, was the beginning of his greatness, was the beginning of this process of him manifesting his greatness. He was born great, but it was the beginning of the process of him revealing his greatness. And that's the beginning of all of us. Because there's two types of people where it was two types of men. With a man that has been developed by the world, and then there's the man that was destined to become. Now, we may not make it, God forbid. A person may not make it to the person they were destined to become. They may spend their whole life being the man that was developed by the world. And when I say the man that was developed by the world, the thinking process of the world, the university, right? Like, people are so proud of themselves in the university that they go to, and their degrees and all these things. But those things are all have nothing to do with Kedusha. They have nothing to do with God. They have nothing to do with your neshama. They have nothing to do other than allowing you to earn working wages, right? That's it. And then you have all these other things that are byproduct of that. Either the job that you get, the money that you make, the neighborhood you live in, the clothes you buy, the resources, the access, the luxuries you experience or don't experience. This is the world that was created. This is the person that was created in the system. But when we get to a point and we realize that that system that we were raised in, that system that we were born into, right? That system was designed to inhibit our manifestation of our potential. Once we see that and we deal with that dichotomy, that's the beginning of our growth. For Moshe, it was, say, as a young man inside of Egypt. For Abraham, it was at an older age. But the bottom line is that it comes to that place of that dilemma of accepting the reality of the world, or accepting the person I'm supposed to become. And so Moshe is dealing with that dilemma, and it's expressing itself by seeing a Jew and an Egyptian fighting each other. Because those are the two parts of himself inside. You can even say on a deeper level, it's a sign of the animal soul and the godly soul. Right? Am I going to stay in a reality where I'm going to continue to feed my animal soul in Egypt? Or am I going to go on an exodus and I'm going to feed my godly soul? And so the sages teach that Moshe, when he strikes the Egyptian, it wasn't that he was just like, he's just some like violent guy who just went off. It was that he was killing the Egyptian inside of him. he was stuffing the Yitzhak, the animal soul with godly light. And so not only did he have to kill that part of himself, he had to bury him. And so that killing and the burying separated him from Pharaoh, separated him from the other people, even the other Jews, they even separate, because there's another dilemma that comes after that where they, the people say, like, well, what are you going to kill us too? Two Jews fighting. So he became separate from everything when he went on that process, right? And so that process of that separation, that process of removing the false identity and getting to the true identity, that's the dilemma that we all have to deal with, right? That's the dilemma that we have to do, because the world that we live in is so powerful and we could believe everything that we see and everything that's around us. We're like, hey, this is it. This is all I need. This is the matrix. So anyways, Otino had to jump off. Elder, you got any words on this?
Yeah, I think that the biggest aspect is that we, when you get to that place where you identify that that there's a part of you that needs to die, that needs to go, that is hindering you from being that person that Hashem has desired for you to be. I believe what's interesting to me is that, because I love this concept that you just brought out, with Moshe Rabbeinu killing the Egyptian, because the idea is that whenever we decide to make a change and put that old person or that evil inclination or that part of us, our lives, away that is hindering us, it's interesting that then you have to fight the internal battle first, and then when you win that battle, and then you begin to act outwardly and bring things into the physical realm, there are those around you that now wants to treat you as if you're like a convict or some type of enemy, and they despise that. And I think it's because they realize that they may need to make that change as well, but they don't have the strength or the ability to do it. But then there's also those around you that see that change, and it benefits them. It gives them the courage that they need. So Torah, Rabbi.
Yeah. So that's, it's just, I mean, it's such a big concept. I mean, I have to do a podcast on it, God willing, tomorrow morning. I'll be able to put it out. But I'm gonna really hone in on this idea of the person that the world has developed, versus the person we're supposed to become. You could take that on an individual level. You could take it on a communal level. You could take it, and you could take it on a world level, right? Because the world that we're in now is a world of tohu and vuhu, right? We're going through places of struggle. We're going through different challenges, but that's not it. Like, that's just part of the experience, right? And in the same way that there's a part of me that I have to break out of to get to the ultimate expression of myself in this lifetime, is the same way that in this lifetime we're supposed to break out of the challenges of the world and get to the totally perfect